Is this okay? Or is that making too much noise?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Even on one? Nah, we're good. We're good. Yeah, we're good. All right. Let's. Oh, it's a little loud there. Okay. So let's begin here. All right. So I'm Roy Williams. Going to give you a rundown of beginning telescopes, and if you're interested in buying or using your first telescope type of thing, yeah. Let's get one light. There we go. All right, so it's a program that we do. So if you're interested in buying a telescope or, learning how to use it better if you have one type of thing. How many of you have a telescope ready? Okay. Did anybody bring their telescope here? Okay, so after the program we can have a look at it type of thing. So that's what we do. All right, so to start off with, so just to kind of run down the first thing. So buying and using your first telescope. So there's a couple questions we ask people. The first question is, what do you want to what kind of objects do you want to observe? Do you want to observe planets? Do you want to observe deep sky objects? Are you going to do some bird watching or something like that? So that's the type of thing. The first thing I'd like to get a sense of. All right. Yeah. Right. How much are you willing to spend? So the budget is important. So objects that you want to look at in your budget. All right. And then eventually, do you want to do astrophotography? Even maybe not now, but maybe in the future if you want to do astrophotography. Those are the three basic questions I ask people, because people say, well, what kind of telescope should I get? And that's those are the three questions I run people down. Okay, so yeah, I drove all of these miles and they're closed. Okay, so all right, so just some general advice. Okay. What you pretty much want to do is buy the largest aperture, the diameter of your telescope that you can afford, okay, and that you can physically handle. So maybe you have a lot of money and you can buy a huge telescope, but if you physically can't deal with it, then it's not really worth it, type of thing. So that's real important. So what the larger aperture does, the larger the diameter of your telescope, it collects more light. So you can think of a telescope as being a light bucket. It's going to collect more and more light. So right here I got a 6-inch telescope right here, and it has what that means, it has a 6-inch mirror right here. And we have telescopes like this all the way up to 12 inches, even 20. One of our members has one up to 20. And so the bigger that diameter, is going to gather more light, and therefore you can have higher resolution, so you can see finer details. All things being equal. Again, if you have a big mirror and it's not well made, then it doesn't help you. Okay, but all things being equal, the larger the lens, the larger the mirror, that's the way to go. Now there are some trade-offs, like we talked about. Aperture, the larger it is, the more expensive it gets, and then it becomes less portable. Okay. Any questions on this slide or anything so far we've got? Okay. So power. Oh yeah, power is relatively meaningless. So it depends on the eyepiece used. So if you see an ad, I used to say if you go to Kmart. So Kmart doesn't exist anymore. So if you see an ad, or if you go to Walmart or someplace and it says, or on the internet, it says, this telescope goes up to 800x. That's like a huge red flag. It's probably not going to be a good telescope. So power is relatively meaningless. Typically, we look at very low power in the very beginning. Okay, so when we find an object, and then we switch to higher power with the eyepieces. So it's meaningless. It depends on your eyepieces what the power is. And like I said, a lot of times we use only low power. So it's overrated is what I'm trying to say. Okay. So, yeah, so remember, a small scope with high quality optics can give you superior view of the universe. So, yeah, again, just because you have a larger mirror, if it's not well made, if it's poorly made, or poorly silvered, it's not going to help you out. Okay. So what kind of objects do you want to observe? All right, so that's our first question. All right, if you're stuck in the city or in Endicott and you got lots of bright lights, you're probably not going to do too many galaxies. You might want to look at galaxies, but if you're stuck at home and you can only observe from home, you're going to be doing these brighter objects probably. So planets, the moon, double stars, maybe some of the brighter open star clusters type of thing. So this is what we call our bright objects, or our planetary objects, kind of. Okay. Oh, something got hidden there. Whoops. I don't know what that was. Okay. So what do you want to observe? If you want to, so yeah, so we can, if you want to do planets, the moon, double stars, these bright objects I just talked about, what we call planetary, even though star clusters aren't planetary, but they're, they're bright, they're kind of, consider a refractor. Now, what is refractor? Refractor is, this is a refractor right here. This is, I think 140 millimeters, 120, and so it's 4-inch lens. That's 120, 60 millimeters, maybe a little bit over 4 inches. But there's a couple lenses in there, and the light goes straight through. Okay, typically refractors are really good for planets. I'll talk about why that is in these brighter objects. So this is the famous star Albireo, which is in the head of Cygnus the Swan, and it's a very beautiful star. One's gold, one's blue, and so if it clears up tonight, this is like a star we would get in, because it's out in the summertime and in the fall. Okay, and it's really nice through a refracting telescope. Okay, so if you like, if you want to look at the planets, the moon, double stars, I definitely recommend getting a refractor, probably. Okay, but if you want to do deep sky objects, like galaxies and nebulas, these are dimmer objects. Comets and star clusters, you'll probably consider a reflecting telescope. Okay. However, this kind of depends on your budget too. Okay, so what to see at all, limited budget, consider refractor. So basically, what you got here is that, long story short, is that you can get a larger aperture with a reflecting telescope price-wise. I'll talk about the prices a little bit. You can typically get a larger mirror for the same price. So lenses are more expensive. That's what I'm trying to say. So once you get above 4 inches, once you get 5 inches, once you hit 6 inches in a lens, the price just shoots up incredibly. So those are out of reach with a lot of people's budgets, just so you know. So I did go to the Naval Observatory and got to look through. They have 2 telescopes there, a 26-inch. This is in Washington, D.C. on Massachusetts Ave, and got to see the 26-inch both refractors. One was 26 inches, and the other one was 12, and it was amazing. And the 26 one was on the moon. It was really, I was like, why did they got that on the moon? I'd have it the other one was on Saturn. I'd want it the other way around, but I was really impressed. It was amazing. So anyway, optics of a refractor. So basically, the image formed by a lens in the front, or you have several lenses in the front. Okay, and so right here, and the light goes straight through, and then typically there's a right angle. This is what we call it, because it shoots the light out at a right angle, hence the term right angle. This can be done with a prism or a mirror, and then you have the eyepiece. Okay, so oops. Oh. So the advantage of a refracting telescope is that the pathway is clear. Did I mess something up?
No, that was me.
Oh, okay. So the pathway is clear. There's nothing obstructing the. Whoop! I did something. There you go. Okay. Right. What does that button do? Turns it off.
Yeah,
Okay. So anyway, the pathway is clear. What do I mean by that? If you look at this telescope here, this reflecting telescope, there's an object in the way. So the light comes in, hits the mirror, bounces off, hits a smaller mirror. So you have to build this thing called a spider to hold that secondary mirror in. So light is hitting this. So it's blocking your telescope. So the advantage of a refracting telescope is you have nothing in the way. There's nothing in the way at all. All right. So that's what we call a clear pathway. And it's enclosed. One of the advantages is that it's factory enclosed. There's that telescope, the black one right there, the reflecting telescope, that's open to the environment. So dust is getting in there. Little critters might crawl in there if you have the dust cap off or whatever. So it has to be more maintenance. It's higher maintenance. So cheaper lenses may suffer chromatic aberration. Well, chromatic aberration is when different colors, the colors of the spectrum will focus at different lengths, and you get this like a rainbow type of image going on. Won't talk too much about it. So here's some options. Now, I kind of quickly looked at the prices because things have really shot up because of current events, and even before that. So these are ballpark figures, and don't quote me totally on this. But so a 2-inch refractor, about $300. 80 millimeter, a little bit bigger, with equatorial mount. Equatorial mount is this type of mount right here. Okay, like a cheaper equatorial mount. We'll talk about what that does in just a second. Maybe a little bit more, $450. Okay, and then once you get to that size right there, 120, it could be up to 900. I think that was about $600 when we got that about 10 years ago. So I'm saying it's probably about 900 now. Okay, so to give you a ballpark idea. Now with $900, I can get, with a reflecting telescope, I can get double the size. I can get a 10-inch instead of a 5-inch. So you can get a bigger aperture. So larger apertures are very expensive. So okay, so yeah, you have to consider costs. Refractors cost more per given size. Astrophotography means that you need a more expensive mount. So if you do want to do astrophotography, you need to have a special kind of mount. This is called an alt-azimuth mount, and it will not so I think that's working. I don't know if that's working or not. Maybe anyway. So it can't really do any astrophotography. I mean, you could probably take a picture of the moon, that's because it's so bright. It won't follow the object accurately enough. This right here is an equatorial. The telescope would sit right here, and once you polar align it, this type of mount allows you to follow the object. All right, so it can follow the object and take a picture of it. Okay, so that's a little bit more expensive. So if you're going to do astrophotography, you don't want to get one of those Dobsonian telescopes, because really you can't do astrophotography. All right, so reflector, we talked about that a little bit. So image is formed by a mirror. You have a mirror right here. The light comes in, parallel lines come in. They reflect. They start converging here at the secondary mirror, which shoots it out the side, and then it's magnified by the eyepiece. All right. So in both telescopes, what you do to change the power is you change your eyepiece. So you right here, you change your eyepiece. So one eyepiece. This is 25 millimeters. That will give me. If I want something higher power, I go to maybe a 10 millimeter. So the lower the number, the higher the power type of thing. But I don't want to get into too many details like that. Let me, I got to bring this back over here, I think. So anyway, and you got, so the image comes in and it hits the secondary mirror. And where did I put my clicker? Okay. Thanks. So this has what we call an obstructed pathway. All right. So again, this thing right here is blocking some of the light. There's going to be a blank spot right there of your mirror that's not being used. So it does have. It also sets up a problem where these two mirrors have to be perfectly aligned, and that's called collimation. About once a year or so, with a telescope like that, you have to align your mirrors. And so you have this little laser tool called a culminator, and you can line up your mirror. So that, again, a little bit higher maintenance than a refractor. It's open pathway, like I said, so you're going to get dust in your telescope, and eventually you do have to clean your mirror. We call it a folded pathway, but I won't talk about that. So yeah, it's a little bit more difficult to point. A refracting telescope is it's like line of sight. You're just looking along the telescope, and it kind of makes more sense. Whereas this is, everything is reversed. You're looking in here, and so it's not as easy. take a little bit more practice. Now, you might be asking, is there a combination? Is there a hybrid? Is there a telescope that have lenses and mirrors? Was anybody thinking that? So Schmidt-Cassegrain or Maksutov, those are the hybrids. What we talk. So they have folded optics, meaning they're going to bend the light. Okay. You have multiple mirrors and lenses. It's a closed system. They're very compact. They're very compact. That's the big advantage of these guys. Let me show you. And these were really popular in the 80s, 70s, and 80s, late 70s and 80s. And our 14-inch telescope, which I didn't give a tour on, that's a Schmidt-Cassegrain. But I thought I had another picture. Hold on. I got a picture out of. There we go. I have to go back. This picture's out of sequence. So just to give you an idea of what's going on here with a Schmidt-Cassegrain, and what you got is that light comes in, hits a very steeply curved hyperbolic mirror. Parabolic mirror, and because of that, like if you didn't have this lens here, what would happen is the colors, like if you were focusing, you'd see red focus, and then orange, and then yellow. They focus at different planes, different points. So that's why this is called a correcting plate, because what it's going to do is going to correct for that color aberration. Okay, so that's what the correcting plate does. All right, so it's a thin lens, and the advantage there is that you also put your mirror right on the back of the. They glue it right on the back, so there's no obstruction in a way, or at least less obstruction, I should say. But anyway, that's how our 14-inch telescope works. Now, the main telescope I try to tell people to get when they're beginners is what's called a Dobsonian. Now, a Dobsonian telescope is This is a Dobsonian, and really, when we talk about Dobsonian, we're actually referring to the mount. So a guy named John Dobson, who actually came to Astrofest in 1997 here, so he's actually been in this room. So he came in 1997. In the 50s and 60s, he popularized this type of mount. So he was in San Francisco, and he would go out on the street. Everybody would think he was nuts, and he would show people Saturn and the moon and all that. So his idea was that you want to spend money on your mirror, okay, not on the mount. He wasn't interested in doing astrophotography, and a lot of beginners are like that. They just want to point the telescope at the moon or at Saturn, right? So that's really what's really good about these is that they're very easy to use. There's very few moving parts. You look through the finder right here, you get your object in, and then you're close, and then you can just do little circles, and there it is. So this type of telescope I highly recommend for beginners and kids, okay, because it's just so simple. All right. Okay, so the type of telescope that it really is, the optics is called a Newtonian. That design is a Newtonian, which Isaac Newton invented. But I'm sure somebody else made that mount, but John Dobson was the one that popularized it. So to give you some prices here, again, this is a little sketchy. I quickly looked. So as you get bigger and bigger mirrors, they get more expensive. That type of thing. So, all right. Any questions on this? We're almost done here. Where did I put my thing down? There it is. Okay. So Maksutov. That's how you say that. Maksutov. It's a Russian design. I mispronounced it earlier. Maksutov. So yeah, Questar makes an incredible telescope, but it's too expensive. Okay, now we talked about the different sizes of telescopes and what you might see. So I found some pictures online. This is the Orion Nebula, and so I don't know if they told what size telescope it was, but this is a picture, and your eyes won't see color. So you'll see a little bit of green, like it'll look grayish green when you see this object through the telescope, but this will give you an idea. Like this one right here might be this one might be like an 8-inch telescope, okay, and this one might be a 12-inch reflector, and so 8, 12, and this one might be a 20. So just get like a ballpark figure. I'm just trying to give you an idea what it looks like, because people get disappointed. This guy right here is really good for planets. It's a 6-inch, but if you try to look at the Orion Nebula, it'll be there, but it'll be a fuzzy patch. It won't be as distinct as that first picture. Okay, so that's why this one's really better for planets, but it can do the Orion Nebula okay. So here's another idea. Again, these telescopes are way too big, but you know. This is put out by the Obsession Company, which makes high-end Dobsonians. I mean, these are huge telescopes. Their smallest one is 12.5. Okay, so I've looked through a 20, and I've actually looked through a 26-inch one, not by Obsession. And I remember looking at this is the Hercules star cluster, and it was straight up in the sky, and so you had to climb up this ladder. And I swear I was like 8 feet off the ground, looking in this lens, and it's dark. You're getting vertigo. You're like, you're gonna fall over. So anyway, so there's some practicalities. You get these big telescopes. So picture this. This is a 6-inch, pointing straight up. That's no problem, right? But if the mirror is 26, this thing's huge, right? So anyway, what I'm trying to show you the pattern, like, you know. Through a smaller telescope, it's going to look more like this. You're going to see less stars in this star cluster. But through bigger telescopes, you'll see more. Okay, so this one, you really need like an 8-inch to see it. It's okay in the 6-inch, but you really need an 8 or a 10-inch to see the globular star clusters. All right, so now one of the things all these telescopes have is something called a finder telescope, and these are really vital. These are low-power telescopes that are that piggyback on the telescope right here. So the key thing is that they have to be parallel, okay? And so what happens is they don't stay parallel, all right? So, but the way it's supposed to work is that you look along the tube first. Okay, let's say I'm looking at Venus. There it is. Then I look through the finder scope. I put it in the crosshairs. There's crosshairs, and if they're parallel with the main telescope, I should look in and it should be right there. Okay? You always want to use low power in the beginning because it gives you a bigger field of view. So if you use high power, you're not going to find it. Okay? Unless you get really lucky. What happens over time, you know, this is like a MacGyver. Someone put like this screw here just to kind of fix it, you know. So you got these screws that you have to align it. So typically what you do is, I don't know, once a month or whatever, you check it on the moon, because you can get the moon in without the finder, and then you look through the finder and then you use these screws to align it. So it's crucial that those are parallel. If they're parallel, it makes it really easy. Now there's other things. This is called a telrad, and what this does is you look this way. Unfortunately, I don't have one with me, but you look this way, and it's a little piece of plexiglass that has a bullseye. It's illuminated 2 circles, and it's illuminated bullseye with red, and you can dim it. You can get it really dim, and you can put your object right in the middle. So this was invented in the early 80s, maybe late 70s, and so, you know, people still invent things. I mean, that thing, when that came out, that was like, wow, that's a great idea. You know, so you're able to center your object. So it's not even a telescope. It's just a piece of glass angled, and it projects this bullseye that allows you to align it. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. Let me telescope mounts. So we talked about the different types of mounts. So this is what we called alt-azimuth. So this is altitude going up and down. This is azimuth going side to side. So we call this alt-azimuth. All right. This is also alt-azimuth. So it goes around this way, and it goes up and down this way. This guy right here, which I don't have a telescope on, this is the equatorial mount. This is the superior mount in the sense of doing astrophotography. What you have to do is that this axis here, this right here, has a point toward the North Star. Sometimes they have a telescope. Yeah, they have a telescope here. You get the North Star in, and now you're aligned with the North Star, which means one axis is parallel to the Earth's axis, and so it makes it very easy to follow the object. So let's see, and there's these locks. I'm not familiar with. There it is. Okay, so there we go. So it makes it very easy to follow the object. All right. So that's pretty much it. Let me see. So there's the equatorial. So again, that's for astrophotography. Okay, so yeah, remember the mount can make or break a good telescope. So many times people will come up here with a cheap telescope, and optically it's not bad. Like I get the moon in, and it could be from Kmart or if you remember Sugarman's. I got my first telescope at Sugarman's. So it could be pretty good, but if you have it on a crummy mount, it's all over the place, and you can't get the object in. It's useless. So it is good to have a good mount. You can't undersell that. That's really important to have a steady mount. That's usually the biggest problem when people come up here. Now there are way more gizmos out there, so that you can add to your telescope. You can add webcams. You can add what's called CCD cameras. I thought I fixed that. Digital cameras. There are something called go-to telescopes. Our 14 and 20 inch are go-to, which means a computer will automatically move it to the object. Okay, so that's pretty fancy. So you can get that. You can get binocular eyepieces. So you can actually have an eyepiece that has two eyepieces in it, and you stick it in the telescope, and that's pretty interesting. It gives it more of like a 3D. Like it's really good for like Saturn and the moon. Kind of gives it a more 3D type of aspect to it. Something your brain does with your two eyes. It kind of you can see slightly dimmer too. They say you can get down one more magnitude. Additional eyepieces. Yeah, eyepieces are like speakers. Okay, so you know if you're familiar with stereos, right? So I know everyone listens through their phones now, but right, or their computers. But there used to be a time when people really were into high fidelity and they had really speakers that were designed right. So you could have a not so good amplifier and maybe not so good turntable or cassette player or whatever equipment you have. But if you have really good speakers, that will sound great. Okay. So the same thing with eyepieces. The eyepiece is very critical. You could spend a lot of money on good eyepieces. In the beginning, maybe you don't want to spend that much money, but you can spend $300, $400, $500 on an eyepiece. So yeah, that's really, really important. So okay, there is a simple option. You can just go with binoculars on a tripod. What's good about that is that if you find out you're not that interested in astronomy, it's still good for sports or concerts, things like that, okay? Or just get a lounge chair and check out the stars. So when you do get a telescope, make sure you read through your manual and learn what each knob does. So like those knobs I was just fiddling around with, I didn't know where they were. So these are the locks. These are really important. So okay. So you don't want to move the telescope with the locks on, but so anyway, it's real important to know what everything is. Don't over tighten, and always move the scope with the locks off. There are exceptions to that. Or 6 inches design where you can move it with it on. So I'm not really sure how that works, but it's mechanics. Somebody knows how to do it. Get familiar with the sky. All right. So you got to know your constellations. One of the key things you do is you learn one constellation and you use a star map to help jump around to another. Also, if you know a buddy that knows some constellations, we can point out constellations with the laser type of thing. Know where the North Star is. That's really crucial. The ecliptic is a line on the star map here in the sky where is the path of the sun over 1 year, and that's where the planets are. So the ecliptic it goes from east to west, peaks in the south. Okay. So, and yeah, so just get star maps. Let me see what's going on. Let's see if there's Any chance? No, I don't know. So, all right. Then there's, just so you know, there are coordinates up in the sky called right ascension declination. It's just like latitude and longitude. So up in the sky we have these coordinates. That's how the computer knows where to go. All right. And that's pretty much it. I think read your manual, get a friend to help. Join the Astro Society. We have an Astro Society here at the observatory. You can talk to Drew about that. Any luck on the sky? No? Okay. All right. So, take an astronomy course. Visit an observatory. All right. So, are there any questions on this? Any questions on the telescopes? And I know some of you wanted me to see your telescopes, so I'll do that. Let me see. I'm gonna go. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So I brought 2 telescopes.
Okay.
And I bought one at Harbor Freight like 5 years ago.
Okay.
And I was observing Saturn with it pretty much all week.
Okay, cool.
And that was $45.
Okay.
It had to be that expensive.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. As long as how steady is the mount. Is it pretty good? He's gonna show me. Okay. All right, hold on. Let me turn off my mic. So those who are online, if there's anybody watching, or all 10 of you, we're gonna turn this mic off here once I figure out the button. Here we go. Okay. I don't want any live mics. That's not good. Don't want to say something. It's still on. Yeah, we can go in the lobby.
Yeah, we did Saturn and Jupiter.
Okay.
But
Yeah, let's go in the lobby and check it out. Yeah, let's do it in the lobby. Yeah, so hey, you guys, interns, if you want, I have a bunch of black lights and the kids can draw with markers. So kids, right this way. I'll be right with you when you get concerned. So come right this way in physics. So I have a little glow in the dark activity for kids. Right this way. Let me show you.
Roy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's right. Let's see what we're gonna do. Okay.
My first telescope was something that small. I got that when I was 2 years old.
Yeah.
I still use it. 50 years ago.
Yeah, he's right.
So like if you go online,
I'm printing off some sky maps for September,
that's your.
so we'll have them out. And did Roy mention that, seeing how it's all clouded over tonight, you can pick up a card to come back?
I